Welcome to Adventures in Accessibility, a podcast that explores the far reaches of disability, access, and inclusion, with your host, Tess Stanton.
Before starting the Runway of Dreams Foundation in 2014, Mindy Scheier spent 20 years working in fashion as a designer for the INC collection and as a stylist for Saks Fifth Avenue. Mindy was inspired to start Runway of Dreams after her son Oliver, who has muscular dystrophy, dreamed of wearing jeans like everyone else. After using her design skills to adapt jeans that met his needs and increased his confidence, she went on to conduct extensive research as to the modifications required to mainstream clothing to meet the needs of the largest minority group in our world, people with disabilities. In 2016, Mindy partnered with Tommy Hilfiger to make fashion history by creating the first mainstream adaptive clothing line in the market. Runway of Dreams was founded on the basis that clothing is a basic human need. The foundation develops, delivers, and supports initiatives, providing a platform to broaden the reach of mainstream adaptive clothing and promote people with disabilities in the fashion industry. This year's Runway of Dreams fashion show was recognized as one of the top 7 New York Fashion Week shows by Forbes, highlighting the latest designs from the adaptive category featuring brands such as Kohl's, Target, JCPenney, Zappos.com, and Tommy Hilfiger. Due to the overwhelming amount of requests Mindy received at Runway of Dreams from a multitude of brands and industries for connection to people with disabilities, in 2019, Mindy created GAMUT Management. GAMUT is a trailblazing consulting and talent management company that represents people with disabilities across the fashion, lifestyle, and entertainment industries. GAMUT exists to lead brands toward doing better, more inclusive business, helping to engage with and develop new products for people with disabilities. GAMUT works with a diverse range of clients, including Adidas, Victoria's Secret, Footlocker, Kohls, and QVC. Mindy has been featured in Newsweek's The Creative Class of 2019 Innovators and People Magazine's Heroes Among Us, making the fashion industry more inclusive. She's also been featured in USA Today, Parents Magazine, The New York Times, The Washington Post, Vogue Business, WWD, NBC's Today, ABC's Good Morning America and The View, Access, CNBC, Forbes, Hollywood Reporter, and Fox News Channel. An inspiring TED Talk speaker, Mindy has received numerous awards, including ARC's Catalyst Award for Marketing Influencer of the Year, Citrin Cooperman's Women at the Wheel Leadership Excellence Award, the Association of Image Consultants International Bravo Award, and an Able Incorporated's Michael Graves Award for Creativity and Persistence. Mindy has also been given the honor of ringing the bell at the New York Stock Exchange in recognition for her innovative work in the adaptive space towards raising awareness and driving change for people with disabilities. Mindy studied fashion design with a dual program at the University of Vermont and Fashion Institute of Technology. Okay, well, hello, Mindy. I really just want to start out by saying that I am so excited to be interviewing you today. I'm such a huge fan of you and your work. So we can just kind of kick it off with a visual description. My name is Tess Stanton. I'm the host of Adventures in Accessibility. I'm a Caucasian woman with dark brown hair and dark eyebrows. I'm wearing gold hoop earrings and a gray sweater today, and I'm in an office setting. I'll go ahead and hand it over to you, Mindy.
Thank you so much. It's so lovely to be here. I am also a Caucasian woman with curly red hair. I have freckles. I'm wearing a navy blue fedora hat and a denim jumpsuit, and I just couldn't be more excited to be here.
Oh, awesome. Well, and I want to add that she looks absolutely fabulous. So I think that's important to mention as well. So I want to jump in just by saying that you are a trailblazer in every sense of the word when it comes to bringing adaptive clothing into mainstream fashion. So can you start out by telling our listeners about how your son, Oliver, was kind of the catalyst for this journey and that fateful night involving jeans?
Absolutely. So I'm actually a fashion designer by trade. I'm also lucky enough to be a mom of a now 18-year-old son, Oliver, who has a rare form of muscular dystrophy. And when he was approaching school age, it was very clear that he was going to struggle with being able to dress himself independently. He really couldn't do buttons. It was tough to put pants over his leg braces. He really couldn't tie shoes or put shoes on his own. So when he did start school, he wore sweatpants every day so that we knew he'd be able to independently go to the bathroom and, be able to function typically based on the clothing that he was wearing until he was 8 years old. old, and he came home from school and said, Mom, I want to wear jeans. I don't understand why everybody else gets to wear jeans except for me. And this was back in about 2012, 2013. And it was truly a kick in the stomach moment, not only as a mom, but also somebody that was dedicated to the fashion industry from a career perspective, that I needed my 8-year-old to remind me of how critically important clothing is to who you are as a person, your self-esteem, your confidence, how you chose to show up to the world. And I looked at that little 8-year-old face and I said, well, guess what? Tomorrow's going to be a really big day because you're going to school wearing jeans. So he went to bed. I admittedly sat at my kitchen table in front of a pair of jeans that he did have that I would have to dress him in, cried my eyeballs out that how could I have missed this? I pulled myself together, ripped apart the jeans, took out the zippers and the buttons, cut up the side seam, and it was about 2:00 in the morning, so my access to anything that any fashion designer would have been proud of was very limited. So I truly used peel and stick Velcro. I used some tricky stitching to be able to have it in a place that he'd be able to wear the next day. And it was really the first time that he was able to independently dress himself in anything other than sweatpants. And the immediate transformation that came over him from wearing a pair of jeans was palpable. And it was really awe-inspiring to see that. And what that did was really open my eyes to the fact that if Oliver was this profoundly affected by a single pair of jeans, how in the world did the 1.8 billion people on our planet who have a disability, how did they manage clothing challenges, and how much was it affecting their self-esteem and confidence and all of the above? So it was really that moment that was the catalyst to starting Runway of Dreams in 2014.
Wow. And you've come so far and done so much work since then. And I saw that Oliver was recently accepted into Tulane University.
Yes,
So congratulations to him.
Thank
That's amazing.
you. It was so exciting, and I'm so grateful because it was his first and only choice. So that worked out well.
That's awesome. Incredible. Well, yeah, huge congratulations to him. And so something I want to emphasize, and something that you always bring to the forefront of your work and your speaking, is that clothing is just so much more than fabric. And to quote your work, clothing is a basic human need. And of course we need clothing for its functional purposes, but it does go so far beyond that because it's a matter of self-expression and confidence. And it's so important that everyone has, the opportunity to wear clothes that honor their identity. And so I wanted to ask you, what are some modifications you've discovered that help people with disabilities feel more confident and more comfortable in their clothes?
Absolutely. So being that at that time, first of all, Oliver was, had only been a part of our life for about 8 years. I needed to really understand the population of people with disabilities at large, and if there were commonalities between vastly different disabilities and clothing challenges. So I actually took a year, the year of 2013, to only do research and truly embed myself in the world of disability. And fortunately, after kind of that deep dive into research of doing focus groups and surveys and going to hospitals, talking to PTs and OTs, etc., I was able to extrapolate that there were 3 main categories that transcended across vastly different disabilities. And they were, number one, the closures. So button, snap, zippers, hook and eyes were almost 100% a challenge amongst both physical and cognitive disabilities. So really rethinking how product closes, number one. Number two was having the product be adjustable to be able to fit different shaped bodies. So whether that was because of a limb difference or a seated body, or like, for example, in Oliver's case, because part of his disability really resided in extreme curvature of his spine, it distorted the shape of his body. So things fit him differently because of that. So having the flexibility of the product be adjustable was number two. And the third was really rethinking the way the product went on the body. So, for example, putting something over your head and navigating arms through armholes is a tremendous challenge for many people, and very specifically for the part of the population that had to be dressed 100% of the time. That no matter what we did, they would still require a caregiver to help dress them. I definitely challenge anybody out there to try to dress another human that they are not able to provide any help in the process. It's very difficult. So really rethinking, perhaps let's open the product in the back and go in arms first. And it literally is such a seamless process and so much easier for so many people. And we would be able to give the gift of time back into people's lives. Is you can't put a price on that. So when we think about those specific categories, the real thought process when I went to brands was I didn't want to recreate the wheel. I wanted more people to be able to wear the same product as everybody else. A perfect example is a shirt that is behind me. It is a typical Tommy Hilfiger. It's one of the first products that we worked on with them, button front shirt. And it looks the exact same as a typical button shirt, only it has magnets behind it. And literally it closes on its own with very little work that needed to go into closing that product. And it looks the same as what everybody else was wearing. That was really the mantra of adaptive product, and especially from a mainstream perspective, shouldn't scream adaptive. It should look like a typical product that had a different way of closing. And this is something that I always find incredibly fascinating every time I say it, but the button in the buttonhole was developed in the 13th century. And the fact that we are still using that quote technology in today's day and age when we literally run our lives through a phone is preposterous. So we have a tremendous opportunity in the fashion industry to be able to be forward thinking. And just because something had been done a certain way prior doesn't mean that that's the only way that it can be done. And that with that philosophy, that is how we have made such an impact in the industry.
Absolutely. And I really want to emphasize that because Runway of Dreams Foundation has made such an impact. It's been so seminal in increasing the accessibility of adaptive clothing. You know, we're talking about brands like Target, Tommy Hilfiger, Zappos, so many more that have, you know, incorporated these ideas, these findings from your research. And I think what's so great is that, you know, that work also increases the visibility of people with disabilities in media. You know, incorporating that adaptive clothing opens the door for more people with disabilities to be included as models and just overall talent in fashion and how fashion is represented on a mainstream level. And so I wanted to ask you, you know, a little more about that with GAMUT Talent Management, because it promotes just that, you know, bringing people with disabilities into mainstream media. So can you tell us more about GAMUT and what led you to start it?
Absolutely. So it really was a very organic, natural process in the birth of GAMUT Management, because once we launched with Tommy Hilfiger in 2016, literally the floodgates opened and all these other brands and even other industries like the entertainment industry started reaching out to Runway of Dreams to be connected to people with disabilities. And brands would reach out to us to say, well, we want to start developing adaptive products. How do we do it? So it became very clear that a second company needed to be born, and that was GAMUT Management 2019. And GAMUT is really the first of its kind consulting and talent management company that all we do is work in the adaptive space, and all we represent are people with disabilities. It is not a division of what we do. It's all that we do. And really being able to help brands authentically enter into the adaptive space through their products and services. And we do that by including people with disabilities in every step of the value chain. As I say this very often, that there isn't a designer, a product developer, a marketer, a PR representative on the planet that can really effectively do their job in this space without having somebody with disability by their side. And that's critically important. And then from the talent management side of the business, we really help the entertainment fashion industry understand that people with disabilities are consumers too and need to be a part of our mainstream world, both visually and from a product and services perspective, and that it's a huge business opportunity. And so what naturally happened is that Runway of Dreams Foundation became the why. Brands and industries needed to get involved in the space, and GAMUT became the how. How do you do it? How do you become connected with people with disabilities? And how do you show that publicly? Which actually lends itself to the third part of GAMUT management, in that we developed the first of its kind seal of approval called the GAMUT Seal of Approval, that for products that are deemed adaptive, we allow them to go through a certification process, that it is evaluated by a third party of people with disabilities, PTs, OTs, experts in the space, that if they are awarded the seal actually goes on the product. That is the trust factor for people with disabilities, to know that that product was approved by the population and that brand really did develop it authentically. And it is something that we're just super excited about. And in that, it should be the same as Good Housekeeping seal of approval, gluten-free, green, all of the things that are in our world, that this shouldn't be any different, that this needs to have a standard of authenticity.
Absolutely. And I think that is such an important lesson for everyone to learn, is that when decisions are being made that concern people with disabilities have to be included in those conversations and those decisions. And I think that that's something that you represent so well and just set such a good example of. And so I want to revisit what you said. You did a year of research concerning people with disabilities, including people with disabilities, before even starting, Runway of Dreams. So I want to know, outside of the lessons you learned in adaptive clothing, what else did you learn through that research about people with disabilities?
My experience was so limited. I only had Oliver to base this off of. And also his form of muscular dystrophy is so rare. He's one of 70 cases documented in the world. So I could not, in good conscience, nor as, a deemed expert in the space, go out to an industry or industries without taking the time to really understand this population, what the difference between cerebral palsy and muscular dystrophy is, or Down syndrome and autism, or all of these nuances. And by the way, I'm still learning every single day. It wasn't like after that year I could say, okay, got it. I understand. I'm an expert. It's really committing to being ever evolving in my education and my team's education, and committing to sharing that with other brands and industries that we're working with, because it's a constant evolution. And the best and most important way to learn is from the population. It's how I learn everything, is, being very, very closely connected, really understanding the nuances. And even from an ADA perspective, that is something that I'm forever trying to make sure that I am up to date, in all of those, the different nuances of it. Actually, one of our chief strategy officer, Jonathan Kaufman, who's on our executive team, is, extremely well versed in ADA compliance and whatnot. And I learned from him, as he comes from the population of people with disabilities from a personal perspective. He's always educating the team if there's been a change or a nuance or some article that we need to read, or etc. And I think that, we always want to make sure that we are being as knowledgeable as possible, with a new day every day.
Absolutely. Yeah. And exactly. And our work here at the, ADA Center does center on the ADA, which gives legal protections to people with disabilities. But I think on top of those legal protections, it is so important to spread that attitudinal awareness toward disability. That is so important in addition to those legal protections. And so I think the work you're doing and including people with disabilities in your decisions and putting them at the forefront of mainstream media is so important in promoting that attitudinal awareness toward disability. So I want to commend you for that, because I think it's really, really excellent work.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And so, like I said, I first and foremost just want to appreciate the work you've already done to transform the fashion industry because it is so much. But I also have to ask, what's next?
Yes, we have made incredible progress in the industry, but we do have so much more work to do. I feel confident that we will get to a place that adaptive is just another category in the industry, no different than plus size or petite or maternity, and that these kind of conversations don't even need to happen anymore because it is just a fact. It is a part of our mainstream world. And in order to do that, we have to continue to not only develop the category, and this is a big part of what we do through Runway of Dreams in our fundraising, a lot of the dollars go to this, is really working with next generation. That is critically important through our collegiate programs and being directly on campuses, creating college clubs, inspiring next generation designers to really understand that people with disabilities are a part of our consumer landscape. That is so, so important because if there's only so much that we're going to be able to do during my lifetime, this team's lifetime, it's really your generation, next generations to follow that are going to make this a mainstream perspective. And that's so, so important. So I think that's a big piece on the Runway of Dreams side. On the GAMUT side, it's really just continuing to push that boulder up the mountain in all of the fashion industry, the entertainment industry, the lifestyle industry, to have this be a very mainstream notion, that it shouldn't be a good for them. They included people with disabilities in their campaign. It should absolutely be no question that should be how we are looking at our population. As again, people with disabilities are the largest minority in the world. Of course, they should be visually included in everything and be in roles, for example, that are not created for a person with a disability. It should just be an actor in that role that happens to have a disability, so that we are really normalizing and expanding the norm. That's a big kind of tagline that we use at GAMUT, is just expanding the norm of who is considered, quote, normal, should have a very, very large expansion, which actually is how we got the name GAMUT. It does run the gamut of everything from A to Z of what that includes. And really from the consulting perspective is having brands understand that this is a huge business opportunity. This isn't an initiative. This isn't a feel-good project. This is actually a business opportunity that brands should understand, that the reality is that every single one of us has the opportunity to be a part of the population at any point in our life. These bodies that we're in right now are on rented time. It could be an accident, it could be a surgery, it could be just getting old. That it is the only minority that every single one of us could be a part of at any point in our life. And when you look at it from that perspective, of course we should have adaptive products in our mainstream world because we're all going to need it. Fact, at some point in our life.
Absolutely. We always say here at the center, good access is good business, and accessibility benefits everyone.
Exactly. I actually would love to share a story that I recently heard because I think it sums that up so perfectly. There was a school teacher that was headed to school and he happened to be in a wheelchair. And when he got to school, it was snowing. There was a lot of snow on the ground. The custodian was shoveling the steps, and the teacher said to him, "Could you do me a favor and shovel the ramp?" And the custodian said, "Absolutely. Let me just finish this. And absolutely, I will immediately do the ramp." And the teacher said to him, "But if you do the ramp now, everybody can enter school."
Mm-hmm.
Is that so powerful? Of course.
Yeah.
That's how we need to be looking at this.
Yep.
If it works for somebody with a disability, it works for everybody. That's just a fact.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, such an important message. And thank you so much again, Mindy, just for being here, for sharing your story, for doing all the work you do. I want to ask, is there anything else you want our listeners to know?
If you wanted to find out more information, you can go to runwayofdreams.org and find out everything about what we do, our programs, etc. And if you would like to join GAMUT, if you want to become a talent, it doesn't cost anything. campaign to join, the only thing that we require is that you have to have a disability. So you can go to GAMUTmanagement.com, find out more information about what we do and how to join. We are really what we like to call a very modern talent management company. On that side of the business is that we want to elevate the voices and the visual of people with disabilities and have the population involved in everything from product development to being in campaigns or in commercials and movies and television. We need to normalize the population.
Absolutely. Mindy, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Adventures in Accessibility. Tune in next time for another dive into the unknown.
Adventures in Accessibility is hosted by Tess Stanton and Jessica Lucania is our sound engineer. This podcast is a project of the Rocky Mountain ADA Center and is funded under a grant from the National Institute on Disability, Independent Living, and Rehabilitation Research. Grant number 90DPAD0009-01-00. This production is intended solely for entertainment and informal guidance and should not be considered legal advice. The opinions expressed by guests are not necessarily held or endorsed by the Rocky Mountain ADA Center.